Are you tired of your sourdough starter overflowing or struggling to track its feeding schedule? Finding the perfect jar can make the difference between a sad, sluggish starter and a bubbling jar of liquid gold. Today, I'm walking you through the top 7 best sourdough starter jars on the market that I have personally tested right here in my own kitchen. I've mixed, scraped, fed, and fermented in every single one of these containers to see which ones actually deliver on their promises and which ones just leave you with a sticky, frustrating mess. 7. Tyniaide KS01. When I first unboxed the Tyniaide, I was cautiously optimistic about what it had to offer. It comes as a complete set, featuring a glass jar, a silicone spatula, a breathable cloth cover, and a metal lid, which is basically everything you need to get your sourdough journey started. The packaging was neat, and the jar itself looked sleek enough to sit proudly on any kitchen countertop. For a beginner looking for an all-in-one solution without having to buy separate accessories, this kit initially seems like a very convenient package to bring home. In practice, the glass clarity of this jar is quite nice, allowing you to easily observe the bubble structure developing in your starter. Being able to see the fermentation activity is crucial, especially when you are trying to learn the signs of a mature, active culture. The included cloth cover also does a decent job of letting the starter breathe while keeping out unwanted pests like fruit flies, which are always drawn to the smell of fermentation. The aesthetic is minimal, and the included accessories match well with the overall design. However, once I actually started doing my daily feedings, the daily experience became a bit frustrating. The mouth of the jar is noticeably narrower than I prefer, which makes getting flour and water into the container without spilling a bit of a chore. Furthermore, trying to get the included silicone spatula in there to thoroughly mix the thick paste often resulted in me getting sticky starter all over my knuckles. It is incredibly difficult to scrape the sides down cleanly, which is essential to prevent dried, crusty bits from forming on the upper half of the glass over the course of a week. 6. Zunmial 680 ml 1-peak sourdough starter jar. Moving on to the Zunmial, we have an option that heavily emphasizes a compact footprint for the minimalist baker. This jar holds roughly 680 milliliters, which translates to just under 23 ounces of total volume. It comes with a neat little feeding tracker band, an adhesive thermometer, and a very sturdy-feeling aluminum lid. Right away, the compact size makes it very appealing if you have limited counter space, or if you prefer to keep your starter tucked away neatly in the corner of your refrigerator between weekly bakes. The glass quality on the Zunmial jar is fairly standard, offering a good amount of transparency so you can keep an eye on your rising culture. The shape is slightly more cylindrical, which is generally a positive feature because straight walls are traditionally much easier to scrape down than curved ones. The aluminum lid is also a nice touch, screwing on smoothly and providing a solid seal when you want to put your starter to sleep in the fridge, or sitting loosely on top when you need to let the gases escape during active room temperature fermentation. Despite the nice straight walls, the 680 milliliter capacity quickly proved to be a significant limitation during my testing phase. If you are someone who likes to bake large batches of bread, or if you maintain a larger amount of starter to share with friends, this jar simply does not give you enough runway. I fed my standard ratio one evening, and by the next morning, the peak activity had pushed the starter completely over the rim, spilling a sticky, glue-like mess all over my counter. 5. Lorzon 6600 Sourdough Starter Jar Kit. The Lorzon Sourdough Starter Jar Kit represents a very noticeable step up in both functionality and overall kitchen aesthetic. From the moment you pull this out of the box, it feels like a premium piece of equipment dedicated entirely to the craft of bread making. The glass is thick and reassuringly heavy, giving you the confidence that it won't easily chip if you accidentally tap it against the sink while washing. It brings a real sense of purpose to your countertop, looking like a professional tool rather than just a repurposed jam jar. One of the most impressive features of the Lorzon kit is its wide-mouth design, which completely eliminates the frustrations I experienced with narrower jars. Pouring in water and dumping in flour is completely mess-free, and you have plenty of room to maneuver a spatula. Speaking of the spatula, the one included in this kit is wonderfully rigid at the core with flexible silicone edges. It contours perfectly to the inside of the jar, allowing you to scrape down the walls with incredibly satisfying clean sweeps that leave the glass looking spotless. The tracking tools included with the Lorzon are equally impressive and very thoughtfully designed for daily use. The tracking band is thick, highly elastic, and grips the glass fiercely, meaning it absolutely will not slide down no matter how much you handle the jar. The thermometer strip is also applied securely and features bright, easy-to-read numbers that clearly indicate the current temperature of your culture. Knowing your starter is sitting exactly at that sweet spot of 75 degrees Fahrenheit is effortless with this setup. During active fermentation, this jar performs beautifully, providing ample room for the starter to double or even triple in volume without any risk of a dreaded overflow. 4. ABIOTO 34-ounce sourdough starter jar kit. Next up is the ABIOTO, and simply put, this thing is an absolute beast. With a massive 34-ounce capacity, this jar is specifically designed for serious home bakers who need to maintain a high volume of starter for baking multiple loaves, pizzas, or batches of sourdough discard treats. The sheer size of this container immediately impressed me. It feels incredibly substantial and completely eliminates any anxiety about your starter bubbling over, even if you feed it a highly aggressive ratio and leave it in a warm room. The heavy-duty nature of the ABIOTO jar extends beyond just its size. The glass is exceptionally thick and feels practically indestructible in the hands. I wouldn't recommend dropping it on a tile floor, but it easily withstands the rigorous daily clinking of metal spoons and heavy silicone spatulas during aggressive mixing. Despite its large size, the profile of the jar is balanced well, so it doesn't feel overly bulky or awkward when you are reaching in to scoop out your mature starter for a recipe. Mixing inside the ABIOTO 34-ounce jar is perhaps one of the most satisfying experiences in sourdough baking. The mouth is exceptionally wide, granting you unrestricted access right down to the bottom corners of the container. You can vigorously whip air into your flour and water mixture without ever worrying about splashing it over the edges. The included scraping tool works wonderfully to push all the unmixed flour from the bottom up into the hydration zone, ensuring a perfectly homogeneous mixture every single time you feed. The visual contrast of the tracking tools on this jar is brilliant, making it incredibly easy to monitor your starter's progress from all the way across the kitchen. 3. Superbaking sourdough starter jar. This is a product that truly impressed me with its meticulous attention to detail and intelligent design. Superbaking is a brand that clearly understands the nuances of bread making, and this jar feels like it was designed by actual bakers rather than just a manufacturing committee. The glass has a beautiful clarity and a perfectly smooth interior finish that makes it remarkably non-stick, which is a massive advantage when dealing with something as inherently sticky as hydrated flour. The geometry of the Superbaking jar is optimized perfectly to minimize waste and maximize ease of use. The base is slightly rounded on the interior corners, meaning there are absolutely no sharp crevices for dry flour to hide in or for old starter to get trapped and turn moldy. When you go in with your spatula to stir, you can glide smoothly along the bottom and up the sides in one continuous, uninterrupted motion. This thoughtful shaping makes the daily cleaning and feeding process incredibly fast and totally stress-free. I was particularly blown away by the quality of the silicone tracking band included with this specific jar. It is wider than most, exceptionally durable, and features highly legible markings that make tracking your peak rise a highly precise science rather than a guessing game. It grips the glass securely, staying exactly where you place it, yet it remains easy to adjust up or down with just a slight pinch. It is exactly the kind of high-quality accessory that elevates the entire kit above the competition. Another standout feature of the Superbaking jar is its impressive thermal shock resistance. 2. Coco Bird 1 Pro Sourdough Starter Kit. This kit is nothing short of luxurious. From the elegant, beautifully designed packaging to the premium feel of every single component, the Coco Bird 1 Pro makes you feel like an elite artisanal baker. The jar itself is stunning, featuring a slightly tapered design that looks absolutely gorgeous sitting on the counter. It is the kind of baking tool that you actually want to leave out on display when guests come over, doubling as a piece of functional kitchen decor. Beyond its aesthetic appeal, the functionality of the Coco Bird 1 Pro is strictly top tier. The glass is exceptionally thick and beautifully cast, ensuring a perfectly even surface that wipes down effortlessly. The wide opening invites easy feeding, and the total volume hits that perfect sweet spot, large enough to handle a robust bubbly rise without overflowing, but not so massive that it dominates your refrigerator space. It is a wonderfully balanced container that suits the needs of 99% of home bakers perfectly. The custom spatula included in the Coco Bird kit is arguably the best mixing tool I have ever used for sourdough. It features a brilliantly engineered core that provides massive leverage for stirring thick, stiff starters, while the edges are just soft enough to act like a professional squeegee against the glass. One scrape around the interior of the jar leaves the glass looking as clean as if it had just come out of the dishwasher, keeping your starter's environment pristine and preventing any unwanted bacterial growth on the upper walls. The cloth cover provided here is another massive win. It is made from a thick, highly breathable, yet tightly woven linen-style fabric. 1. KNEADACE KS. This jar completely revolutionized my sourdough workflow and set a new gold standard for what a starter kit should be. Every single millimeter of this product has been engineered with the baker's absolute convenience in mind. The glass jar is masterfully crafted, featuring a perfectly cylindrical shape, incredibly thick walls, and a wide mouth opening that makes feeding, stirring, and cleaning an absolute dream. It feels like a piece of high-end laboratory equipment repurposed for artisan bread. What truly sets the KNEADACE apart, and the reason it takes the #1 spot, is the sheer genius of its feeding tracking band. Unlike simple rubber bands, this jar features a specialized elastic tracker that incorporates both the days of the week and exact times. You simply slide the band to the starting level of your dough, and then align the printed day and time to mark exactly when you fed it. It completely eliminates the, "Wait, did I feed this yesterday morning or last night?" confusion that every sourdough baker eventually faces. The lid on the KNEADACE KS is another masterpiece of functional design. It is a beautifully machined, anti-rust aluminum lid that feels incredibly premium in the hand. It is designed so that you can simply rest it perfectly on top of the jar unthreaded, providing an ideal breathable environment that still protects the starter from debris, or you can screw it down tight for an airtight seal in the fridge. You don't even need to mess around with cloth covers if you don't want to, as the lid's resting position works flawlessly for room temperature fermentation. The temperature tracking on this jar is also flawless, featuring a high-quality, durable thermometer band that is integrated seamlessly into the design.